Hey gang, Ronin here. Welcome on back to the Retrocade. It's Wednesday, and that means it's time for our second edition of WTF Wednesday. The feature where we explore games that, in theory, ended up being, I suppose, better than they actually were. Unless you think that I would go after games that are maligned by most people or ones that people would usually like to enjoy, I'm going right after my own sense of nostalgia and my own childhood this week. So before I get that out of the way, let me get the usual housekeeping taken care of. If you've been enjoying the content, best way to show it, as always, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell to be notified of the latest content. Also, remember, we have Sports Saturday and Sucker Punch Sunday coming up this weekend, where we will play sports and fighting platform-based games from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. Also, follow us on Twitter at Retrocade. We post new content there. Every day we post new content here on the YouTube channel as well. And help us hit our goal of 100 subscribers so we can unlock the customization algorithm and make this channel better. And if there's any game you'd like to see us feature from the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo, Sega Master System, Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, SNK, Neo-Geo, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, or PlayStation 2, leave it in the comments below or drop me a tweet. And it can be any game you guys want. So like I said, we're going right after a piece of my own childhood this week, and we're going to talk about bowling. And specifically, we're going to do that by playing the PS2 edition of Brunswick Pro Bowling, which, again, when it came out in the mid-2000s, was a game that was very much like every other variation of bowling that ever came out before it. And to give you an idea of how long bowling games have been around on video game platforms, the first one I ever played was the first video game I ever played was for the Intellivision. It was just called bowling because back then they didn't really have the presence of mind to try and make it flashy, and you didn't have licensing and things like that. You have to remember this was like 1981, 1982 at the earliest. And again, it's not a game that is overly complicated, but much like how we talked about last week with Family Feud trying to capitalize on the American fascination, especially with TV game shows, even though that particular show has been around the world in multiple variations. I think there's 50 different varieties of it. At some point, people decided, in trying to make sure that there was more available content for video game consumers back in the early 80s, and capitalizing on the ability to create games that dealt with different sports or games or what have you, they decided, why not? Let's make a bowling game. And it's partly twofold, because bowling games are not hard to construct. And two, they try and capitalize on something that, especially here in the United States, has been a staple of most kids' childhoods for as long as there have been kids. But what we're going to do today is we're going to try and do a tournament on Brunswick Pro Bowling, which will be, I think it's 3 rounds. And let me load up my guy here. And we'll explain a bit of the shortcomings of a game like this, of which there are quite a few. Most namely, why would you play a game about bowling when you could just go bowling? You know, it's not like there's a shortage of bowling alleys in the world, although right now, with how the pandemic has been and how the economy's been for the last couple of years, I know there have been a great deal of recreational areas that have been impacted, and the bowling industry was no different. But growing up as a kid in the 80s, I got the last real gasp of the phenomenon that was bowling in the United States. And you have to remember, way back now 60, 70, 80 years ago, bowling was huge in this country. And there are different varieties of it. Growing up in New England, where I grew up, they had the standard 10-pin bowling, which we're going to play today, which has the huge ball and the fat pins and stuff like that. But in New England, they have a totally different variation of it that's called candlepin bowling, where the ball is about the size of a shot put. The pins are cylindrical. You get 3 shots instead of 2 each frame. And there's a lot of other variations that differentiate it from standard 10-pin bowling. When the pins fall, they don't clear them out between shots, and you can use those to knock down extra pins. It's a lot harder than standard 10-pin bowling, but this is what we're going to play. And when these games come out, And they still come out all the time. I went to a game shop here in the Ohio area not too long ago and was looking around, and they have them still for next-gen consoles. And you can play them now on your iPhone or your mobile device of your choosing, whatever you want. You know, I freely admit I have one on my phone. I play it whenever I'm bored, or I would usually play it primarily when I was hanging out with my son, because he got into bowling about the same time I did. Now, the mechanics of this game is not difficult. As you can see, and let me be fair here, and I shudder to think about this, but if you're watching this video and you have no idea what bowling is, one, where in the world have you been? And two, it's not a hard game to play, because you are rolling a ball down a lane that's 60 feet long, and those white things at the end are the pins. There are 10 of them. They're aligned in a triangle. Each one has a different number. Each one has a specific designation, but there's nothing really otherwise substantial about them. And your whole goal is to just knock them down. And if you can do it in one shot, that's a strike. Do it in two, that's a spare. If you fail to knock down all the pins in two shots, whatever's left, that's what your score is. So, the trick in this game is understanding how to line up your shot, and then also figuring out how much spin you want to put on the ball, because the lane has a layer of oil. You can't see it, but that's why it's shiny. And then with the left stick, you want to pull back and try and get in this green zone for the amount of accuracy you have. And then when you come down, in theory, you can throw the ball as hard as you want, or you can lay off if you want to try for a softer shot. I have never been able to get this to throw any less than 100%. And what you're aiming for is if you're right-handed, you're aiming between the first two pins, the one in the middle, and then the one on the far, or the one on the right. If you're left-handed, you want to go for the 1-2, which is the front two pins on the left. That's called the pocket. And now I have a split with the 7 and 9, which is nigh on impossible to hit. So I clip that out so I get 9 in my first frame. And bowling in a tournament, you always bowl 2 frames, and then your opponent will bowl 2 frames. But this is the entire game, which, if you are really into bowling, I suppose, you could go through and play this till you're blue in the face. Wouldn't be that hard. And I, like I said, have been playing bowling for 40 years now. It was the first real game that I learned how to play that wasn't, a board game. And one of my fondest memories as a kid was going and spending time with my grandparents, and my grandmother was a seamstress. And on Saturdays, she'd be working in the morning, we'd take a break for lunch, and in Boston, and it ran for like 40 years, they would show candlepin bowling from like noon to 1. And it was a full program, and it was like what you would see if you watch bowling nowadays. And as a kid, it was something for me to watch, and it was really fun. And then she would work for a couple more hours, and at like 3 o'clock on ABC, back in the halcyon days when there were only 3 or 4 TV channels, they would have the professional guys do 10-pin bowling, and we'd watch that. And again, growing up in the 80s, long before the internet, before I was old enough to really do anything, it was, one, something that I could do to spend time with my grandparents, whom I adored, and two, hey, I pick up a strike there. It gave me a chance to learn about something that I could go and actually do. And I loved bowling so much as a kid that my grandparents actually bought me a little set of plastic pins and a little plastic ball, and I would set them up on one side of my grandmother's sewing studio, and usually when she was taking a break, she would keep score, and I had learned the game by watching it enough that I understood how to set everything up and knock everything down and let her know what was going on. And when you're a 4 or 5-year-old kid and you're just wanting to be able to stay busy and you're looking to get attention and you're looking to spend time with your family, man, I keep whiffing on spares. That was some of the really few bright spots in the childhood that I have tried long and hard not to reminisce about too much. I didn't have a great childhood as a kid, but that was one of those that really kind of stands out. And then as I got older, I got into doing bowling leagues, and I did candlepin bowling. I did 10-pin bowling leagues. I still have my actual 10-pin bowling balls. They're in storage, but I haven't used them in a long time. But I say all that from a position of absolute nostalgia, and I freely concede that. And games like this are designed in some ways to play on people like me who have that sort of nostalgia, who grew up playing the game, and I consider bowling a game. It's a skill game. I don't consider it a sport like football or baseball or basketball. Yes, you do need to have some athletic ability to be able to sling a 15-pound bowling ball down a lane, but you only need to be able to have one arm to do it. And it's, in that regards, it's like golf. Bowling is about keeping your form right and being repetitive with your motion, in much the way you need to have that for a golf swing. See if I can actually pick up a spare here. Hey, I actually got a spare. So I finally clip a 10-pin, and that gives me a spare. I'm not going to see where I'm at as far as score goes. So I'm up by 7 pins halfway through the first string. Now, a string is 10 frames. So you get 10 frames to see what you can do. And in 10-pin bowling especially, it's all about making sure you can compile enough strikes. Because once you get a strike... Oh, how that was not a strike, I have no idea. That 9 should have dropped. That was robbery right there. But anyway, the ultimate goal you're trying to get in 10-pin bowling is to get 12 strikes in a match, which will give you a score of 300. That's a perfect game. And getting a perfect game in 10-pin bowling is hard. I can say that from the position of somebody I never really even got close to a 300 ever. And again, I've been bowling for 4 decades now. But it's been done, and professionals do it all the time. But in keeping score in this game, what you're really just trying to do is it's whoever has the highest score at the end of 10 frames, they win. But when you get a strike, then whatever your next 2 shots give you, that carries over into your strike frame. So, for example, if you strike in the first, you strike in the second, and then you strike in the third frame, your first frame score is 30. Whereas if you get a spare, which I'm working on right now, so whatever I get on this ball will be added to my spare total and also be given into my current frame. So it behooves me to get a strike here, because then that'll give me 20 pins. And instead I left myself with a split and not an easy one. I have the 9-10. So I got 8 out of the fill on my spare, so that gave me 18 pins to work with in that 6th frame. Now I gotta see if I can thread the needle here and get this spare, which again, with a bigger ball you would think it'd be easy, but with the way the ball rotates going down the lane on the oil, that makes it that much more challenging. But because the mechanics are not hard, and because the game is not hard to build... There I go with a strike. I needed that. Game companies can crank out stuff like this all the time. But it still comes back to the question of why would somebody shell out 40, 50, sometimes even $60 brand new for a game, about a game that they can go pretty much anywhere in any major metropolitan area and play for half that. Bowling is not an expensive sport. If you go to a bowling alley nowadays, I think renting shoes is like maybe $5. Bowling a string is like maybe it's $5 a string, if that. Maybe a little bit more now. Like I said, I haven't been in a long time. And what bowling alleys have really tried to do in the last 15, 20 years is market themselves as more family-oriented, fun stuff. You know, they do things like cosmic bowling, and they have bowling leagues. Bowling leagues have been around for eons, but as a ways of getting parents and kids together to do something that anybody can play. And in the 90s, they came up with bumper bowling, where they set up the bumpers in the gutters, which are these things right here. You don't want to get the ball in either one of those, because that completely negates your shot. But one of the things they did is they took out, or they added bumpers to make it so kids wouldn't get so frustrated when they were learning the game, which was a good idea. And like my son, when he first started bowling, they also did a thing where, because most kids don't have the upper body strength to be able to sling a ball like a grown-up can, they built a little platform where a kid can put a ball on top of it. It's like a little bit of scaffolding. And then figure out where they want to let it go, and see where it ends up. You know, I didn't have that sort of luxury, I guess, when I was a kid. And I say that not as the old man get off my lawn, walk to school uphill both ways in 5 feet of snow sort of thing. But when I learned how to play bowling, it was, like I said, it was learning how to, with a little plastic setup that I had in my grandmother's house. And then when I got old to do candlepin bowling, and the ball is, again, it's about the size of a shot put, it's considerably lighter. But that's where I learned how to get the form right to be able to shoot. But the economics of playing a game like this, as opposed to going and actually doing bowling, and also doing bowling, you can go out with your buddies. You can have, most places when you go to a bowling alley, you can have alcohol, or you can have food if you want. You know, when you get to the fourth frame in a bowling match, they called it the beer frame for a reason. You know, that's a colloquialism that stuck around for a long time. And nowadays, especially, the game is so kind of under the radar that, unlike when I was a kid and, you know, I'd see 2 versions of bowling every Saturday, and we watched it religiously. I mean, I watched bowling more than I went to church as a kid. Which I know to some people would be sacrilegious, but I don't care. So we made it through the first match. So I knocked something over next to my desk here. So we'll see what we can do. And win the second match. And because you can skip through most of this game as you're playing it, it doesn't take a long time to play, which is nice, because if you want to just sit down and play for a couple of minutes, then okay. But in order to get good at this game, you're going to have to play it for hours. And most people aren't going to do that. I won't do that. And like I said, this game is designed exactly for people like me. And why am I not going to play it for hours? Because, frankly, I have other games I want to play. I have other things I want to do. You know, to get good enough at this game that you would want to be able to really excel at it and win tournaments and start winning a lot of money, I suspect you're going to have to be playing this game for a couple of years at least. Especially on a game like Brunswick Pro Bowling, where you start out playing like league nights, and you play like 6 or 7 of those. They have a full calendar laid out. I needed that strike after I whiffed in the first frame. But you start out and you're playing for like $5 a night. And who's going to want to do that? In most games like this, and if you're playing games like golf games, you jump right in and you're starting to go for big bucks in golf tournaments. You're not going to sit there and nickel and dime yourself. So, you know, and I also have never played the more recent games, so I don't know if they've changed that too much or how they've evolved over the last couple of years, but that's not to say that there isn't potentially a place for this. I think where they really, really got it right as far as taking a game like bowling and making it something that's accessible and worth putting a lot of time into. Oh, that should have been a strike. Was when the Wii came out in 2010. Because when Wii Sports came out, one of the big things that was a part of it was bowling. And I remember seeing a whole lot of stuff about how it was a way for senior citizens to be able to get up and get active, and for little kids to get up and get active and playing stuff like this. And to me, that's great. You know, I'm never going to turn around and say that was a bad idea or what were they thinking, because the proof's in the pudding on that. Wii Sports was what made the Wii for a lot of people. In a lot of ways, it's also what killed the Wii. But having something that capitalized on the technology at the time of having the motion sticks and the nunchucks and everything to be able to control how you play is a lot more novel idea to me than sitting here, because again, all I'm doing is lining up a shot with the left stick. I'm setting the angle with the up pad, and then I'm hitting the X button to draw the ball back, and I'm hitting the X button to follow through. It's not a massively complicated mechanic. And when you're doing that, you know, it gets very tedious, it gets very repetitive, and it gets boring. And especially nowadays when you have people who spend a lot of time playing games online, and you're wanting to be playing more exciting games, you're playing first-person shooters, you're playing role-playing games, you're playing, you know, sports games, you're playing everything under the sun. Who's going to take the time to slow down this much and play a game like bowling? So, you know, would there be a point at which I think something like this could actually be worthwhile? If they came up with something comparable to what Nintendo did with Wii Sports? Sure. But otherwise, your best option is just go bowling. Again, it's not like, you know, it's not hard to find. The one thing that I will say, having relocated back to the Northeast a couple of years ago, was, and I do find this is an absolute shame, is that my version of bowling, candlepin bowling, is an extremely endangered species. Because of how expensive it is to live in the Northeast, and how much land is at a premium, and how gentrified it became from the time I was a kid to the time I am now an adult, as a silver-haired middle-aged white guy, the ability for these small, you know, independent bowling alleys to stay open and still draw people in, as kids were gravitating away from the game into doing things like video games and playing other sports like soccer and lacrosse and baseball and all that stuff. The people that kind of ran the game in New England and the Canadian Maritimes, because it was catered more towards older people, let it disintegrate, really. And that's a shame. Because again, candlepin bowling is so much different than 10-pin bowling. And I do wish there was an actual candlepin bowling video game I could try, or that would be an option on one of these games. But I'm saying that once more, purely from a place of nostalgia. You know, because that's a part of my childhood I don't want to see die off. And I think that's pretty common with a lot of people who grew up with things that aren't around anymore. You know, I remember people who grew up going to drive-ins every weekend, and then drive-ins went away, and now drive-ins are coming back. So if you think about it in cyclical terms, you know, bowling can, in some ways, as a game, make a resurgence, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of people who care about it enough to keep it going. And I think as far as 10-pin goes, ooh, I got back-to-back strikes there. That's helpful. You know, the 10-pin industry is in good shape. But other variations of it, and there's also 9-pin, there's duck pin, which I know was big in New York State, in the tri-state area for a long time. I've never played that. And even bocce and lawn bowling is big still, even over in Britain and the UK. So, ooh, nice pickup. That's not an easy spare to connect on. And I've only got a 1-pin lead, but I'm working on 2 strikes, so that is helpful for me since he got that spare, as long as he doesn't strike here, which he didn't do. So he's at 100 through 7. And can he pick up the spare here? That ball's got to really bite. The funny thing about this game is that it allows you to bowl in a way that you may actually be used to. Or you can set up a totally different style. Oh, I got a 7-10 split. 7-10 split, if you're not familiar with it, this is the single hardest shot to hit in all of bowling, and it's one of the most hardest things you can do in a skill game. The odds of you hitting a 7-10 split are next to none. And it is truly all about luck more than it is skill. And that usually happens more often than not, than you go right between them. In, again, the 40 years I've been playing bowling, I have never come close to hitting a 7-10 split. I hit a 4-6 split once. I hit a 4-6 split at my sister's bachelor party before she got married. She wanted to go out and go bowling. That's what we did, and I was the only sober guy there, and somehow I managed to clip a 4-6. I can go to my grave going, hey, at least I got that one down. But the trick about hitting a 7-10 split is you need to get whatever pin you're aiming at, you need it to ricochet enough that it will come across the lane and kick out the other pin. And it's just not... There's so many factors to make that work that it is nigh on impossible. Ooh, picked up another strike. If I can run off the sheet with 3 in a row, that'd be nice. I'm already at 137. I don't think my guy can beat me here. Especially if I strike on this ball, which I did. So I get me a turkey. 3 strikes in a row, they call it a turkey. You get 4 in a row, they call it a ham bone. Why? I have no earthly idea. People came up with all that nomenclature and colloquialisms long before I came into the world, so your guess is as good as mine. Yeah, he's at 109, so there is no way he can beat me. Especially because he didn't strike on that first ball. He's at 118, I'm at 167. Yeah, he wouldn't have been able to beat me anyway. So a 167 score isn't bad. That's actually not too far off my actual bowling average, which was about 150 or so, I think. Again, it's a lot easier to rack up a decent score in 10-pin bowling than it is in a variant of it like candlepin bowling. In candlepin bowling, if you can finish with 100, that's a really good game. If you can shoot 200 in candlepin bowling, wow. Nobody's ever gotten a perfect game ever in the 140, 150 years that candlepin bowling has been around. There's never been a recorded entry of anybody ever getting a perfect game in it. So my reputation goes up. I've unlocked some shoes. And I think I got one more match here. I apologize for the lag. I'm using PCSXR2 as my emulator for this because my PS2, I don't have a hookup that it's able to work on my PC yet. And it does tend to get a little bit of lag. So let's see, where are we at on the ladder here? Oh, I still have to beat him one more time. So, okay, well, we'll see if we can move on to the second round. At least, because we're at a half an hour. So it looks like you play 3 strings, and then whoever has the best score at the end of 3 strings moves on. So let's see, line up my shot. Now let's see what we get on our first ball here. Well, we got 9. I don't think I'm going to be able to pick this one up. Nope, I spun it way too hard. I do like that you can at least skip through the animations, because the animations don't change. Again, games like this are not that expensive to make. I say that understanding that modern video games especially are never a cheap endeavor. So I don't want to, cast aspersions on these guys for making this game, saying, okay, well, you guys cut corners or things like that. But Crave Entertainment made this game, and it came out in August 1987, and it was released on multiple platforms, including the Wii. So being able to play a game like this on the Wii, would make sense to me. But playing it with a standard controller on a PS2, again, as I've been saying, I really don't know. But it also came out on the PSP. They came out with an iOS version of it, but it got pulled because an updated version came out in 2015, it looks like. When the PS3 came out, they tried to adapt a variation of it for the PlayStation Move, and on the Xbox, they did it for the Kinect. And if you know anything about the history of the Kinect and the PS Move, they didn't go over all. Well, the Kinect ended up being a better hardware variation of it than the PlayStation Move did, obviously, but okay. Let's see what we can do here in the third frame. When Brooklyn's side, if you are a right-hander and your ball ends up going off to the left and you still get a strike, that's called a Brooklyn. Again, how they coined that phrase, I don't know. Apparently that was when bowlers in Brooklyn decided that's how you want to get a strike. Now I went right up the middle, and that's not what you want to be able to do. That's called hitting it high. So I have the 3, 6, 10 on the right side. And that's what I wanted to do. You hit the first 2, and that usually will take out the 10 pin. Oh, and I'm playing against a lefty. Oh, and she only ended up with 1 pin. Yeah, when this game came out, I mean, it wasn't a well-received game, and understandably so. How many people are going to really go out of their way to be anticipating the release of a bowling game? On Metacritic, it ended up being the Wii version was the highest rated. It got a 52 out of 100. The 360 version, because of the Kinect, got a 44 out of 100. But the critical scores were everywhere from a 3 out of 10 to 6 out of 10 by GameSpot. And I guess the farther into this game you go, it unlocks more stuff, which can make it more fun. But who realistically is going to play that long? Oh, and I got a wobbly kingpin. The pin in the middle is the 5 pin. It is colloquially dubbed the kingpin. Which, if you know your MCU history at all, especially if you were watching the Netflix shows, Daredevil, of course, Wilson Fisk was known as the Kingpin. That's where that term came from. Yet I also whiffed on it. But I come back with a strike. That was helpful. So I'm at 84 through 5, while my opponent is not doing well at all. And that she keeps setting it that wide and only clipping out the 10 pin explains a lot. She's only at 39. And leaves herself a split with a 4 and the 5. So if this game is completely alien to you, if you've never seen a bowling alley, if you've never been bowling before, the first pin in the triangle, if you look at the upper right-hand corner, you see that triangle. So the first pin is 1, and then you go from left to right. So it's 1, 2, 3 are the pins behind it, 4, 5, 6 are the pins behind it, and then 7, 8, 9, 10 are the pins behind that. They make up the back line. And I almost left myself a split there, but the 7 pin dropped. So I have the 6 and the 10 now on the right side. And I need to pick this up for a spare. And I clip the 6, so I don't get the spare. But I'm at 112 through 7. And I'll leave myself the 5 and the 8. Ooh, I went way too light on the accuracy. And yep, pulled it. Well, it's a good thing that my opponent is not really doing well, because otherwise I might find myself in a bit of a pickle here. And she gutters it. Wow. I think she's going to gutter it again, and she does. Oh. Wow. Well, there's no real way I can lose this match at this point. If you get back-to-back gutter balls and get nothing in a frame, then you might as well just hang up your shoes and call it a day. Because, seriously. Well, at least you came back got a spare. Let's see if I can keep within my average here. Ooh, almost left myself a split again, but at least I got the 7 is all that's left. Oh, and I came back with like no strength at all. That ball is going to turn and drop right in the gutter. See, that's the one part of this mechanic I don't know that much about, is how you can set it up where you can alternate how much strength you're throwing. Because, again, it's you just pull back to set up the accuracy, and then you go forward to follow through. And as long as you're hitting up, then you're going to follow through at full strength. Should pick this up. There we go. Finally got me a kingpin. So I'm working on a spare here in the 10th. And I wrap it with a strike. So that should give me 149 or 139? 149. So I have a 102 pin lead. I think it's safe to say that I will wrap this one up pretty easily. And it would move me on in the ladder, although I have no idea how many more rounds I would have to take on. But that, guys and gals, is Brunswick Pro Bowling for the PS2 for this WTF Wednesday. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad game. All the games that I want to profile in this feature are not necessarily bad games. They're just games that I don't understand how they are still relevant or why they would be necessary nowadays. When you look at the landscape of video games and what is popular and what people want to play and what they're looking to do, a game like this just is so niche that it's almost like a micro niche. You need to be a very, very specific type of person who plays a very, very specific type of video games to want to spend the money to get this game and then invest the amount of time and energy necessary to get really, really good at it. So if that's your thing, more power to you, man. As long as you're playing games, that's all that really matters. But again, this is one for me where, yeah, I could play it again, but I would much rather just go bowling, to be honest with you. So if you enjoyed this, and I hope you have, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell to be notified of the latest content. Also, remember, we have Sports Saturday and Sucker Punch Sunday coming up. We also had our one-day feature that we played on Monday, where we replayed Paperboy for the NES. Talk about a bygone era. My God. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at @Retrocade. Help spread the word if you can, so we can get to 100 subscribers as soon as possible. And if there's any game you'd like to see us feature from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation, leave it in the comments below. As always, my name is Ronin, and I will talk to you all for Sports Saturday this weekend. Bye.